have a strong belief that if you're running a business, you should be spending as much time as a business leader working on yourself as you do the business. You're always going to be the ceiling. You're always going to be the bottleneck, the limiting factor. I started investing in coaches and mentors and really pursuing my own personal growth and really just start working on me one brick at a time that allowed me to build into the leader I am today.
Strengthen the love, the legacy, and the lifestyle in your family business. This is Fearless Family Business. So here's something that nobody tells you about leading a family business. That you can look successful on the outside, but be drowning in anxiety and self-doubt every single day on the inside. And that's exactly where Franklin Swann found himself. As the fourth generation leader of a 130-year-old family business, Swann's Furniture and Design, the pressure to keep it all together nearly broke him until he discovered that survival isn't about working harder. It's about working on yourself and putting the right systems in place to get out of the chaos and lead with clarity. In today's episode, Franklin shares how investing in personal development and implementing the Entrepreneurial Operating System helped him to move from overwhelmed and reactive to aligned and thriving. It's a powerful reminder that peace of mind is possible if you're willing to do the work. So enjoy this episode and make sure to subscribe for more fearless conversations about family, business, and legacy. Enjoy the show. Franklin Swann, it's so good to have you here, man. I appreciate you being with me today.
Adam, appreciate you having me on. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have a lot to talk about. Lots in common, lots of common themes that we both have from our background. You're fourth generation family business owner. And I'd love to kind of hear the story of Swann's Furniture and Design. Can you just give us the background, how it started, how it came to be where it is today?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So Swann's Furniture and Design, we're a 130-year-old family business, started in 1895, just here in Tyler, Texas. And it was my great-grandfather's cousin that actually opened the company. His name was T.E. Swann. And he was 20 when he opened our business, which that in itself to me is just mind-boggling, that he was that entrepreneurial and for a 20-year-old to start a company and then it lasts over 100 years is just pretty incredible. So he started the company, ran it for a number of years, and then sold the business to my great-grandfather. And ever since then, we've just run the business and done what we do here in Tyler. And we largely serve this local community, but we've furnished homes as far away as California and Florida. So we've kind of done a little bit of everything.
That's really cool. Yeah. So if you can paint a picture of what Tyler, Texas was like in the late 1800s when Swann's Furniture was there. If you're like me and I've never been to like Tyler, Texas or anything like that, I'm just picturing just like a big, it's big Texas. So like what did that look like at that time?
Well, this side of the state has trees. So it's not like the barren, wasteland they picture it as in movies and stuff. But back then it just would have been a normal town. Our store started off. It was on the square, across from the courthouse, just a typical town. But what's wild is the East Texas oil fields were discovered right about the same time as the Great Depression, and so during that time, the whole country's having pretty rough time, but Tyler ended up thriving really during that time. My dad said that he talked to my great-grandfather about that season, and he said, you really couldn't, from looking at our books, you couldn't tell where the Depression started and ended during that time. He said we didn't really go up, but we didn't drop, and so that really just kind of cemented in Tyler as a pretty good place to live. And we're not a big town, but we're kind of the hub of our general region. It just would have been a normal town, but those East Texas oil fields was a huge part of our ability to survive that season and in that point in history.
Yeah, I feel like that there's another common theme there. Our company started in 1923, and
Hmm.
basically right into the Great Depression. But similar to Texas, the coast of California, Los Angeles became a hub for oil activity. And that
Yeah.
became the economic boom that really fueled our company. So a lot of companies survived and even thrived through that period in the same way yours did, just because of oil kind of carried it in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
which is pretty crazy to think about. But yeah, that's amazing.
I've heard stories that Sears had a location downtown in Tyler at that time, and it was one of their top couple producing locations in the whole country.
Hmm.
And so it's just a little boom town, and so
Yeah, yeah, that's really
we survived through it.
and so yeah, and if you can, just share a little bit about what you all do, like as far as sell furniture, you design for people. What's the value proposition of Swann's Furniture?
So high service, high quality. What I like to say is if you moved to town today, bought a new house and didn't have any furniture that you were bringing with you, we could furnish your whole home top to bottom and do it all in a week. And
Wow.
so, and we have designers that come in and put it all together, create room plans, and it would be very customized to what you wanted. And so, um, we focus on real good quality product. Some of the manufacturers that we've been selling and working with, we've been doing so for over 100 years. And
Mm.
then, there's families that we've taken care of in this town and furnished their homes for generations. I was in the store this couple of years ago, and a lady came in and I met her. And at the time, she was 92 years old. And we got to talking. And she said, the first time I stepped into your store to shop with y'all, I was 6 years old. And my
Jeez.
grandmother brought me in. And so that would have been, my great grandfather that she would have been working with. And then, 3 generations later, here we are talking. And so, we try to give back a lot to our community, try to create an environment where employees and our teammates can truly thrive and find a place that's fulfilling, rewarding, and really allows them to enjoy their career. We had a gentleman, his name was Babe Washington. He worked for us for 70 years.
Oh
And
wow.
so just went to work for my great grandfather. And I used to work with him when I was a kid in the warehouse. And
Hmm.
so we try to find great people and hang on to them for as long as we can. And some of them that turns into decades.
That's incredible. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
noticed that's a theme within a lot of the family businesses that go for 4 or 5 generations. Is this
Hmm.
longevity of employees? But I love the I love the example you gave of a customer who'd been with you for well over 80 years, just that
Yeah.
longevity.
It's
And
wild.
yeah, just and so mentioning, so you kind of mentioned some of the different things that you make you unique from the standpoint of high touch, high quality, high service. Do you think those are the things that help you to stand out and be sustainable over the long term? Is there anything else that helps you to really stand out in a field where, we were talking offline a couple of weeks ago about, the idea that furniture companies, you'd mentioned every week you're seeing one with like going out of business sale kind of
Yeah.
thing. How do you survive in a world like that? And what are the other differentiators that help you to have that kind of longevity?
Yeah. It's a great question. You've obviously got big box retail that puts pressure on the family owned businesses. A lot of them go out of business just because the next generation doesn't care to come into the business. And so you see a couple who's been running the company for however many years, and their kids don't want to come into it and their grandkids don't want to come into it. And so they liquidate, shut it down. And that's how a lot of furniture companies go out of business. I see on a regular basis, I'll get a little news email that comes across and it's like such and such furniture, 100-year-old companies going out of business. And it's just, it's unfortunate, but I think there's a whole list of things that I think when you talk about 100+ year span, you've got to have a real entrepreneurial spirit and a willingness to do two things. I think one is evolve and continually adapt to the world. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of companies that lose their way and they forget who they are. They forget their values and really what kind of started the whole thing to begin with. And so you've got to be able to kind of hold the values in one hand and grasp for that next thing in the other. And as each generation's kind of passed the baton for our company, I feel like we've done a very good job of appreciating and valuing what the previous generation had, and that the previous generation's also been willing to let go a little bit and let the next come along, try something new and really try to take it to the next level. I mean, I think this is our fourth location in this city. So we've continually moved with our customer, trying to be right as convenient to them as we can be. And it's not a focus on just one aspect of the business. If you come into our showroom, I mean, I know I'm biased, but it is gorgeous when you walk in. It's people come in and just to get inspired, you know? So there's that element. And then we have the designers. And if you go to the front counter, the ladies that will check you out are just professional and polite and pleasant to deal with. And then the gentlemen that show up and deliver your furniture are men that you'd be comfortable having in your home. So it's really the whole thing. And then if you have a problem, well, we fix it. And if you want to talk to, you know, I put quotes, Mr. Swann, like you can call and I will get on the phone and work through your issue with you. Or so we just take care of people, and you do that long enough. If you're going to invest, you know, a decent amount of money in furnishing your home, which we sell higher end, upper end, more expensive furniture, I think there's an expectation of service that comes along with that. And I think there's an expectation of service that people want.
Right.
You know,
right.
We're just, you can find what we do in a lot of places, but you can't find many who will take care of you at the level that we will.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like that's something that's been imprinted in your culture since the beginning, and helped you have that lasting quality. And I think I know the answer to this, but how have you been able to really systemize that idea of bringing the types of people that are high service, high quality oriented, and really experts in their field, making sure that they're the right people in the right seats? I know that you are an EOS company as well. Can you talk a little bit about maybe that's contributed to your success, or how systems in general, what systems you're putting in place to make that, you know, legacy stand?
Absolutely. And you and I talked offline about that as well. We stepped into the EOS journey in June of 2020. I would call it easily one of the top 3 business decisions I've ever made in my career. And you know, the interesting thing about a family business and multiple generations, you know, a lot of times when you come in as the new generation, why do we do things? Well, because this is how we do them. You know, it's like, right. And what I realized is we started stepping into EOS and we had our whole issues list, which was significant. You know, when you start that, the crazy thing that I realized is we probably have issues on this list that my grandfather was dealing with.
Right.
Right. But he didn't have the system and the tool to understand how to solve that. And when you're a small town company, you know, family business, you don't have the resources of a big corporation, and we don't want that. We don't want to be a corporate entity, but there are elements of how one operates that does make a lot of sense, and that still can work very well, and you don't lose the soul of who you are. But when we started having a system that allowed us to identify the people that we needed to get on the bus, so to speak, and the people that we needed to get off. That was a process, and it took time, and we struck out, you know, multiple times, but we would identify why, make the course correction. And then over time, we were just able to get the team to where the way it is today. I mean, everybody pretty much on the team is the right person in the right seat. And I like to say doing the right thing at the right time. When that happens, it just is magic. And then what I've also recognized is you start off with the leadership level solving all the problems. But when you get enough right people in place with the right leader, you can begin to push the problem solving down to the department level. And when people are empowered to solve their own issues and problems and supported to do that and encouraged to do that, the whole company begins to just move so much faster than any leader could ever move it on their own, because you can't solve that many problems and you don't even have the relevant on the ground experience to solve those problems, right?
Yes.
So yeah, EOS, from a professional standpoint, literally transformed our company. It probably saved us during the pandemic from just not burning out. And for a while, I said that it changed our business, and then I started just saying, well, it's actually changed my life because of just how much more enjoyable it is to run the company now.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Now, the couple pins I want to touch on there, because there was the one about how it saved you during the pandemic. I'd love to hear about how that worked, and then how it changed your life in general, like generally speaking, just like how Franklin is operating better today because of it. So yeah, can you maybe touch on how you survived through the pandemic through it?
So so with any business that has inventory knows that there's just a difference in that. When you have inventory, that is just a dynamic in business that makes it's its own unique challenge, right? And the big thing for business during that time was the supply chain, right?
Yeah.
So in effect, what we had to do in order, if you think of a funnel, in order to get enough product, because the demand went way up, people couldn't do anything. They had extra money from the government. They weren't going on trips. And so people had more money. They were spending it, but the supply wasn't there. So in order to get enough supply, we had like 10 times the inventory on order that we normally would.
Right.
And then when the supply chain started to free up, well, all of a sudden that stuff starts rolling in fast, right? So all of a sudden we're, in effect, pulling levers and making moves and shifting and pivoting and canceling and doing all this stuff to course correct. But if we hadn't had the systems in place, if we hadn't had the people and the structure that we did with EOS, I just don't think we could have identified problems, solved them, and moved on as quickly as we did. And we probably just would have been caught up. I don't think we would have gone out of business, but I think that we would have lost great people because they would have become burned out because we wouldn't have known how to properly respond to what the pandemic was, Yeah. So it really, when we stepped into EOS at that time, it was a godsend, and then allowed us to not only thrive, survive that time, but to really, we did thrive in a lot of ways. And we took the pandemic as an opportunity to really transform who we were. And now as we've come out of it, we're a much better company for it,
Yeah, that's an incredible story. I can relate a lot to that. Is Hill Brothers, the company that I'd run, was very, very inventory centric too. We had a lot of industrial products that we went through a lot of that same issue, and I can totally relate to being an EOS, just having a lot of those issues on our issues list, being able to work through them and solve them methodically was so powerful. And this is something that a lot of businesses, and I think especially family businesses, I wish more of them understood that every single company on the planet has issues. Nobody's immune from it, but we want to think that we shouldn't have any, that we want to push them all under. And we're living in this weird artificial harmony, not solving issues, just pushing everything under the rug, not getting anything done. But if we can actually do what you did, acknowledge that every company has issues, and instead of pushing them under the rug, getting really good at solving them. That's what differentiates the good companies from the great companies.
Yeah.
And that's what helps you to get through unexpected challenges like a global pandemic. So yeah, kudos to you for recognizing that and figuring that out and staying alive during a really tough time for furniture companies.
Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, in terms of, how it's changed my life, I mean, it's just freed me up to be able to lead much more rather than manage.
Mm-hmm.
I've been able to delegate things off of my plate to other great people who are honestly better at doing those things than I am. And I get to spend more time with my family. I get to, just have more of a life. A lot of, if you're in retail, especially, I mean, that can be a bit of it's not 24/7. And, we're being higher end. We get away with a little bit more. We're closed on Sunday, which I think we actually hire and keep a lot better people because of that. That's a good thing for us. But I was opening, I was closing, I was working Saturdays, and this really just created breathing room for me to have a life outside of it. So
yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I can't say enough how some of these systems can do that. Did you have to let go of something of yourself in order to kind of accept that? In other words, I know in the EOS world, we talk about letting go of the vine, right? And that's hard for a lot of entrepreneurs to let go of those things. Was that difficult for you, or did you do so willingly?
It was probably, I think that's a process, right? And there's always the next level of doing that. So I've made a ton of progress. There's still areas where I catch myself just even unconsciously still holding on to something.
Yeah.
And my team is good about calling me out when I do. And that's another thing, just a side note, like if you can create a safe space, especially if you're the owner or the CEO, create a safe space for your team leaders to give you raw, unfiltered feedback. Because if they're tiptoeing around you, this whole thing will not work. Like they have to know that they can say whatever they need to say, and that you can hold space for that, and be a mature enough leader to just hear what they have to say. Because there's whatever it is, there's a lot of truth in it. But yeah, I had to let go of things, but I was letting go with structure in place, with expectation in place, and I was usually handing it over to someone who I also I trusted them. And they had gained trust and built trust. I mean, my operations director has been with us over 20 years. My administrative director, she started with us just before the pandemic as a part-time assistant, and quickly realized she was way underutilized, and she's one of the key leaders in the company. So the people who I gave the responsibility over to had earned that. I wasn't just handing it off to somebody who I really had to worry about a whole lot.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's huge. I mean, yes, building people that you could trust, getting the right people in the right seats, and is a difficult thing. But being able to pass those kinds of things on, it's huge. If you're a family business owner or operator and you're looking to get more control over your business, I would love to talk with you. I want to give you a special invite to request a free 90-minute workshop with me to learn the powerful tools of EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. Just shoot me an email at adam.hill@eosworldwide.com. Again, that email is adam.hill@eosworldwide.com. I'll put that in the show notes as well, and I look forward to talking to you soon. I want to kind of touch back on a little bit of your history, and then get into a little bit of the family succession. Is I'd like to know, you touched on a bit of the company history and how you started. How did you get into the business, and did you come in willingly, or were you kind of dragged in? How did it look when you came into the business?
Yeah, it kind of went back and forth. So I started my first experience working in the company. I was about 12 years old. I would sweep the warehouse, move furniture, unload trucks, and that's where I started.
What year was that?
I was born in 82, so would that be like 94?
Okay, yeah, back
something
in the
like that.
90s. There was still child labor in the 90s. I remember that well too. I was part of that.
It was great. I mean, it taught me so much, and it was just we need probably more work for our kids than they get these days. It was good for me. I did that, during the summer after school, off and on. And then I went to college, and I actually went and got into commercial real estate in Dallas for a couple of years and worked for a couple of big firms. Was able and fortunate to work underneath a couple of brokers that just taught me ton about business.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't make a dime,
Yeah.
but I gained just a tremendous amount of experience during that time. And then my wife and I were in Dallas, and a little burned out just on the pace of everything up there, and the opportunity kind of opened itself for us to move back to Tyler. And so we decided to do that. And but for, to answer your question, there was a season when I wanted to go into the company. There was a season where it's like, nope, I'm not going to do that. But I always had this sense that I never wanted to be the owner's son that just showed up and says, "Where's my desk?" It's like, I will earn this. I will prove myself. And just because my name's on the building does not mean that I get special treatment. Like, I clean the toilets here. I've planted the flowers out front. There's no job beneath me. And I think that's just really important for anyone that's a next generation coming into the business, just a big dose of humility. And I mean, your name means that puts an even greater level of responsibility on you to just kind of have that servant leadership mentality, and to not think that something's that you're above something.
Yeah, that's so true. I couldn't agree more as far as that's concerned, especially when your name's on the building. I mean, there's almost an additional sense of an additional, hurdle to overcome in some ways of proving yourself. And and if you have the right kind of mindset like you do, it's kind of like you want to over deliver on the promises and how you're doing. Did you ever find that was there ever any point within your early career where you were toying with the idea of just maybe leaving, or you weren't happy, or was it always like you were just feeling good and feeling strong about being part of something like you are? Or
Yeah, I just walked in and everything went perfect.
Right.
Just because you work in the warehouse in your family business does not mean that you really, truly understand how your family business operates. And, one of the really challenging things is, like, when you go through a transition season, right? So I entered the company like 2010, 2009. So that's right after the recession. We were trying to make the decision to move out of our location that we'd been in for like 25 years, build a new building, move out into this new space. Business wasn't great. And then when you move, especially with a business this size, in like our building's a 50,000 foot building, you just kind of, it's like shaking up the ant farm. You kind of just have to figure out how to do things. And that was really stressful. And so for a while, I really struggled with just really understanding what it was that made us tick. And, I call it, baking our cake. Like, what are the ingredients that really matter?
Right.
And so I could run the business, but I have a strong belief that if you're running a business, you should be spending as much time as a business leader working on yourself as you do the business. Like, you're always going to be the ceiling. You're always going to be the bottleneck, the limiting factor. And so, I went through a season beginning about 2016 where I started investing in coaches and mentors and really pursuing my own personal growth that allowed me to build into the into the leader I am today. But that did not come naturally. That came on the tail end of just a season where I was absolutely not confident in my ability to run this company. I didn't really consider leaving, but I did have this sense that if I didn't figure it out, that I didn't know how I would run it and make it work.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of pressure that I felt during that time personally.
Yeah. And so what steps did you take to take on that personal development? Like, you had that self-awareness. Where did you go? What did you find? What did you look up and discover?
Gosh, I was anything and everything I could get my hands on. So, to deal with the pressure at first, it was, doing stuff like running marathons and seeing how hard I could punish myself in different like physical challenges and stuff. And that only got me so far. I have no clue
what that's about, by the way. I've never done
that. Another common thread of people like you and me. And so there was just this, I was in what I would call a dark season. And I think a lot more businessmen than not experience that, and it can look like different things, but at
Mm-hmm.
the end of the day, it can all feel the same, no matter how it's being experienced. And so I just reached out and hired my first coach, and it was somebody who I could start talking to, start building, my mental, my physical, my emotional health, and really just start working on me one brick at a time, deconstructing things. And it's just, I call it doing the work, but I just started doing the work on myself.
Yeah. Yeah. What were so you discovered, I mean, obviously I think the input was you were feeling like you just didn't have a good understanding. You were in that dark
Mm-hmm.
place. What was the outcome of that? How did that evolve over time, that personal development? When did you start to notice a difference?
I started to notice, I would say, an immediate difference, but God, it's like I've done like 10 years worth of work on myself now. And so how do you know, ball all that up into one and really capture all of it? I think I had my physical health down, right?
Mm-hmm.
I had my on the mental side, like clear thinker. I could come in, run the business, and like I knew how to run a company. For me, the real breakthrough came on the emotional health side, and really dealing with. It sounds weird, but it's like your own relationship with yourself, how you talk to yourself, how you treat yourself, how do you think about yourself, like
Oh
any
yeah.
trauma that you may have gone through, which can look like, have 1,000 different flavors. But it's really dealing with that like inner emotional stuff that to me was the last key that I had to unlock. And once I had that, then it was like, oh man, I got the physical, the mental, the emotional. And I mean, I've got a strong faith, grew up in church, and just have, you know, I feel like a very strong personal relationship with God. But once I was in this place where it's like, I've got the physical thing, I got the mental thing, I got the spiritual thing. What gives? And I was
Yeah.
reading this book by Peter Attia, and it's called Outlive. Last chapter, it's like the high cost of neglecting your emotional health or something like that. And I start reading it, and it was the first time where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm reading a guy, and it's like he's reading my mind. And he makes this statement. It says, your emotional health is your relationship with yourself. And that's when it clicked for me. And that was the thing that I realized was missing this whole time. And I don't know if you've experienced this. I think most of us have. We've probably all said things to ourselves that are worse than anything we'd ever say to our worst enemy. We've
Mm-hmm.
treated ourselves more terribly than we would anybody else. We've thought about ourselves as being more worthless than any human being on the planet. So if you have that as kind of this unconscious operating system in the background that you're not aware of, it's always going to be tripping you up. But then the moment I started to discover that and see it, then I was able to start deconstructing it. And then I don't know, that when that happened, everything started shifting big time.
Yeah. That's such a great realization. So just to reiterate that, your emotional health is your relationship with yourself. Did
Yeah.
I get that right? It's
Yes.
incredible. Yeah. I think those kinds of epiphanies, I mean, just are sometimes you just read something or hear something and it just changes your life forever. And
Yeah.
it just changes your entire perspective on things.
Yeah.
Never know
Yeah.
where
And,
those are going to come from.
I think most men kind of run from that, right?
Yeah.
But when you get to the point that, that the impact of it is so negative that you can't avoid it and can't ignore it anymore, then it's like, well, maybe I'll take a look at this thing, right? Because it's like I can run a marathon, I can run a business, I can, I sit in church and lead my family well and have a beautiful wife and kids and but why is life still not working? And there is this component that I just hadn't figured out and dealt with. But again, once I did, it was like the last domino that needed to fall.
Yeah. Are there any specific tools or actions that you took to get your emotional health and well-being and your relationship with yourself back in line?
Yeah. You really got to start paying attention to how your inner dialogue. I mean, it's simple stuff, right? But I'll tell you this: if you believe, even if you've never told anyone this before, if you believe internally that you're just a worthless human being, you will unconsciously do things to prove that statement true. And when you end up proving that, it's usually something pretty destructive, right?
Right.
So you have to just become very aware, and you have to start realizing, hold on, I don't talk to myself the way I used to. I don't treat myself the way I used to. I don't think about myself the way I used to. Right? I'm a great husband. I'm a great father. Am I perfect? Absolutely not. I make mistakes, but I own them, and I'm able to also show myself some grace and forgive myself when I do have those mistakes, and own it and take responsibility for it. Not blame anybody else for it or be a victim over it. But there's just a healthy way of operating, I think, is a man that's really needed. And a lot of it all comes from this emotional health side. And so really starting to practice talking to yourself, how that, and that's, I think, where it starts. I like to call it doing yourself a favor. You want to start forgiving yourself. You want to appreciate yourself, value yourself, respect yourself. And you can actually go through kind of a journaling exercise to start ingraining that into your mind, and I guess just shifting your narrative and the patterns that you could have built for however long.
I love that. Yeah, the daily journaling habit, that's a huge deal. If you can be intentional about writing out these kinds of prompts. And are there any prompts that you found useful as far as like questions that you answer every day about, reinforcing those more positive beliefs about yourself?
Well, the four things I just stated, I think are very powerful. Right. What do you need to forgive yourself for? What do you need to appreciate yourself for? Why would you value yourself? And having some respect for yourself. Those are all things, like if you think about a relationship, those are all parts and components. Like someone that you've got a healthy, take your spouse. Like you should have, if they do something that against you, you should have forgiveness and grace. You should appreciate them. You should value them. You should respect them. Like those are all healthy things that we give to other people, but we don't ever think to give that stuff to ourselves. Right. And a lot of it comes down to like, self-worth, self-loathing, whatever you want to call it. But, one of the things I've thought of, it's like, take a child, take like one of your children. Would you ever pour copious amounts of alcohol down their throat? No. Would you ever like do all the, put upon them all the sedative things that we do as, especially men in leadership positions, just to like take care of some of the pressure, right? It's like, well, of course not. It's like, okay, well, if you wouldn't do it to someone you love, like your child, why would you do it to yourself? So that kind of, to me, proves like a lot of men just struggle with this. And the more we can talk about those things, share struggles, and have the courage to just put it out there, that I think other men who are in the position of leadership and responsibility can go, oh, it's not just me. I'm not the only one feeling this. Like there was a point where I had developed such my anxiety was so high, I would bring a backpack to work with me every day with about 4 or 5 undershirts in it. Every hour or two, I would switch those undershirts out because I would sweat through them throughout the day, and I literally had to change out my undershirts multiple times a day just so you wouldn't see sweat stains all over my body, right? And so it was a bad spot I was in, but this is a big part of the tool that helped me get out of it.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, and it's a good segue into something that you're building now, and the podcast that you're creating called "The World Needs Men."
Yep.
And am I right in assuming that is kind of the nature of why you started that podcast, is to kind of communicate and convey why men are valued in the world, and what what we need to do as men to just show up in the world. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Of course. My belief is that we need a lot more healthy men. We need intentional, strong men that build strong homes and strong families. And, when I look back at my journey, the men that I feel like made the biggest impact were not the ones with like degrees behind their names and all the acronyms and stuff. It was the ones who shared the reality of what they went through and whatever challenge they experienced. And then they would share how they got through it. And those are the ones that made the biggest impact on me. And then when I look at how much all of the work has impacted my life, I've gotten to a place where I just feel this, this conviction that I didn't do all this work for it to just be for me. Like there's value that I can now give to people by sharing my story, sharing my struggles, just being very real, which is very challenging to do in front of the whole world through a podcast. But, I also know that it's just so needed. And there's a lot of men out there that need a lot of help. Yeah. And so the more normal it can be for men to seek out the help, the better. And I think a lot of the traditional ways of seeking that out really aren't working. If they were, the problem wouldn't be as big as it is. And a lot of that comes down to having safe spaces where men can just be honest. Right. We go to church, sit there. Oh, how are you? Oh, everything's good. And it's like, no, you're burning down.
Right. Yeah.
But we can't say that. We can't talk about it. Let's just all pretend that everything's great. But that just compounds the problem rather than men having a safe place where they can realize they're not alone. It's not just them. And there's tools and ways of like getting your life on track that you just might not have heard of before.
Yeah. Well, good for you for putting that out there, especially in your position and leading from that example. Coming from the perspective of a family business CEO, there's the stigma that we all just have our stuff together, in that role. Like we've got it all like laid out before us, but a lot of us are, and I mean, myself included, have gone through periods of struggle where we don't feel like we have anybody that can relate or share with us. So the fact that you're putting that out there, I think is really important to show other men that they're not alone. And I think that's an important lesson to lead with. So good for you, man.
Yeah. It's interesting. I've actually but just have had comments too from women that have said, "Hey, I listened to your podcast and I understand my husband better."
Yeah.
Which that was unexpected, but kind of just a cool side note on that. But yeah, just a bit of a mission for me to try to help a few people.
I love that. Where can people find that if they want to reach out? Is it just is it on Apple iTunes?
Yeah,
YouTube?
Apple iTunes. I mean, it's on all the podcast platforms, but it's just The World Needs Men.
Nice. The World Needs Men. Yeah. So check that out. And I think that's a hugely important mission that you're putting out there. And before we do wrap up, I want to kind of touch on kind of go full circle. We started out, where Swann's Furniture was, where it started, how you all started, how you got in the business. Where's it going from here? What's the expectation, the legacy that you're building? What about the next generation? How, where does it go from here?
Yeah. So we definitely have a hold mentality in the family. We're not building this thing to like sell it off to a private equity or anything. So I want to build the company as if the next generation will take it over and create that opportunity for them without putting any pressure on them to do so. If my son and my daughter want to go off and, do other things, then I want them to feel confident in doing that without feeling pressure to come into this business, because while it's a blessing, it also has, it's a challenge too. It's a challenge like anything. And family business has got its unique set of challenges, especially when you have parents and children. I'm fortunate that we don't employ just tons of family. I'm really the only family member that's actively involved in the company day to day.
Yeah.
But it might not be right for them. So it's kind of twofold. I want to build it as if they will come into it, but also not go about it in a way that they feel pressured or obligated to come into this company either, and if it goes on to the next generation, that'll be amazing. And if it runs its course, that will be amazing too. And in the meantime, we'll keep serving our community and, creating a great place for people to work that want to work here.
That's great. That's fantastic. And just out of my curiosity, so you're a sole owner now as a company that's been in business since the late 1800s. How did that come to be from the succession in previous generations? How did you get to sole owner and not second cousins running around with the business? I'm curious.
Yeah. So to clarify, so my parents, they're not involved from an operational standpoint, but they are still owners in the business.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wouldn't say that there's been a lot of formal succession planning. But over time, it's kind of like, hey, Franklin's in charge now. And it's like, well, he's always been in charge. It's kind of one of those, it almost just evolved. Right. And I would gain some, through sweat equity, I would gain some equity in the company here, gain some there. And then over time, just slowly built into where I am now. So it wasn't just all of it at one time. It was just, this kind of slow transition.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Worked well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was fortunate, my parents did a fabulous job running this company. And really, my dad is such an entrepreneurial, big picture visionary guy, and took our business from downtown out into the new location that was before, and then out to this one. And he did so much to, set up what the business is now and give me the opportunity to come in and charge it up and take it to the next level. And so, we've just been very fortunate in how this whole thing has unfolded.
That's great. Well, fortune favors the well prepared, and it sounds like you've done just that through all of the personal development, through EOS, the systems that you put into place in previous generations, just running a great business that is a proven model that is proven to last for generations.
Yeah.
So thank you, Franklin. I appreciate you being here today and sharing some time with me. Yeah, man. Yeah. So
thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. And in addition to The World Needs Men, which is your podcast that's available on all the audio platforms, where can people find you if they wanted to reach out?
I do have an Instagram account. I can't stand Instagram. It's just, I hate social media personally, but just Instagram. It's just The World Needs Men.
At The World Needs Men. All right.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Franklin. This was amazing. I appreciate you. It's great. It's an honor to speak with you and to know you. And to anyone that's listening to this and you feel like you got a lot of value from this, you feel like maybe other men or other leaders, other CEOs or family business members might benefit from this episode, please share it with them. Please get the word out about family business and how we can all support one another through this journey that we're all on together. Thanks for joining me and Franklin today. Appreciate you. We'll see you next time.